Hi, I just want to show you how to use Lightroom to set up a custom template to print from Photospeed's panoramic paper packs. So if you've got a panoramic image that you want to print onto these new panoramic papers that Photospeed have produced, select your image in Photospeed. You can see I'm here in the library module. Let's say, for example, I want to print this panorama of a bluebell wood at dawn. Highlight the image down here in the film strip and then click over onto the print module icon up here in the top right. Now, the previous piece of paper that I had selected was a piece of A3 paper, so Lightroom remembers the previous paper size, and so now the image is just placed on that size of paper, but obviously that's not what we want for this print job. So the first thing we do is go down here to the bottom left of the page and click on Page Setup. That brings up the Page Setup window. You can see here that the printer selected. In my case, I use an Epson stylus R2880. Perhaps many of you will be using that, or maybe one of the other Epson printers, but your printer should be selected there. And you can see there's the paper that I used for the last print job, which was A3. Now, in all the presets that are provided by the printer driver, there isn't one for panoramic paper. So we have to create one. So just come down the list to Manage Custom Sizes. Click on that and the Page Setup window opens. Now you can see I've got my Photospeed panoramic preset created there. So once you've gone through this process that I'm going to show you, you will have a preset like that one there, which you'll just be able to click on and select. But in this case, I'm going to create one. So here in the paper size window, what you need to do is, first of all, click on this Add window. This creates a new untitled one. And I'm just going to double click on that, and I'm just going to call it Panoramic. You can call it anything you want, panoramic, and press enter. I've just called it panoramic so that it's different to Photospeed panoramic just for the sake of this video, but you can call it whatever you want so that you know what it is. Here in the paper size windows is where you enter the size of the sheet of paper. So the panoramic paper that Photospeed have created for us is 210 by 594 millimeters. Now we would think of the width as being 594 millimeters, but in this case we actually want to add 210 as the width, because for most printers, if we put the 594 here, which is how we'll look at the panorama, we would view that as the width. The printer doesn't think it can print that wide. The printer actually thinks it's going to print it on its side, so we do it the opposite way around. So put 210 there, which is actually very similar to the width of an A4 sheet of paper, and then put the 594 as the height of the paper. Okay, that's fine, and millimeters, if you want to type the millimeters in you can, but the window will put it in itself. And that's it. You can alter the margins if you like. I tend to leave those as they are, but if your printer will print to the edges, you can zero those to get the maximum print size. But I tend to like to have a white border around the edge of my prints anyway. But you can also adjust those. So for example, because the top and bottom margins there are different, you could, for example, put in 6.35 millimeters so that that is the same. And I just pushed enter there, so that has in effect created that. Just want to go back into that panoramic. Just go back into Manage Custom Sizes, click on Panoramic. You'll see that that just accepted 6.35 there. Okay, so you can see 210 by 594. I've got 6.35 millimeters as my border all the way round, so the printer won't go any closer to the edges than that, but you can adjust those settings if you prefer, and then just click OK. Now when you click OK again, your paper size is set to panoramic 210 by 594. You can see I've got this icon here selected. If it doesn't look right, it means you've got this one here on the left selected. This is just the way the printer will see the paper, the orientation, landscape or portrait. Click OK, and now you can see our image is on that size of paper. Now, depending how you've cropped your panorama or how you've sized your panorama, for example, if you've cropped it from a single frame, the proportions will be different. If you've created your panorama from a series of images and then stitched them together in Photoshop or now in Lightroom with Lightroom's stitching ability, the sizes of your panoramas will vary. So for example, if I just click on some different panoramas I've got down here, which have been done with different methods and different cameras, if I just find some different sized ones, you can see that although they're in the sort of aspect ratio of panoramas, that they're in very different sizes. Some are very long and thin, and so fill the paper differently. So if we just go back to our bluebells as an example, you can see at the moment we've got a lot of white space on the paper. And that's not an issue, because we come over here onto our right hand panel, and here we can start to control all of our margins and our cell size. Make sure keep square is not ticked, because that will have a dramatic effect on what happens. Just make sure that tick is taken out, and make sure the page grid is set to 1 row and 1 column, just in case you've been doing some sort of template with multiple images on the page. These settings will all be remembered from previous print jobs. Okay. Now, as I start to move the width slider, you'll see the print increasing, and Lightroom will handle the resizing for you. So what I'm trying to do now is just make the print look pleasing on the page. It's not going to fill the page perfectly, because it's very unlikely that the proportions of your crop of your panorama is going to be at the exact same ratio as Photospeed's panoramic paper. You may want to use guillotine and cut afterwards. So for example, if you're not happy with the top border being a different width to the side borders, you may wish to use a guillotine and just trim these edges later on, or you might be matting the print afterwards, and so you can put the matte board and conceal some of this extra width afterwards. That's entirely up to you. That's a creative decision. You can also use the margins here, and you can see as I move the margin sliders around, you can alter the positions. I like to keep these margin figures, the top and bottom figures the same, and the left and right figures the same, and that will ensure that the print is centralized and that the margins either side, so even if the borders are uneven, because the aspect ratio of the image is different compared to the panoramic paper, at least the borders will be the same. So you'll have the same size of white border left and right, top and bottom, even if they're different from each other, top and bottom, left and right, so that you get a sort of a pleasing symmetry, at least on the sides and the top and bottom. And then how close you come to the edge is entirely up to you. I've pushed the sliders right as far as they will go. The only way to get closer than that now would be to go back into the print setup box that we did at the start and reduce those print margins top and bottom and pull them closer to the edge. These are now being restricted by those print margins. So if you want to get it closer to the edge, you would need to have smaller margins or to zero those margins if your printer does print to the edges of the paper. But I like to have a white border around my prints. That's a decision I like to take. So that would be entirely up to you. So now what you're seeing on the screen is what you're going to get. This is the actual edge of the paper. This is how close the print is going to get to the edge. So that's nice. That's what I like about Lightroom. It shows it that way. Then you can come down into your print job section and you can start to fill in the details of your print job. Now the great thing about the Photospeed panoramic packs, you can buy packs of single papers if you already know that you have a favourite paper platinum etching, platinum baryta, or smooth cotton 300, whichever you prefer as your favourite paper. You can buy packs of those papers. They also do a test pack, so you can test several different papers. The test packs come with a set of A4 sheets as well, which allow you to send off for custom profiles. So I'd really recommend that you get the custom profiles done, because you'll save a lot of ink and you'll also get a much better print matching. Doing your proofing will be much more accurate. And so, you know, I'd really encourage you to do that. Before you run one of these big panoramic prints off, I'd encourage you to do your soft proofing and hard proofing on some A4 paper anyway, rather than use up some of your big panoramic sheets trying to get the colours exactly right. And in this blog I'll be linking back to a post I did previously, which shows you some of my tricks for saving paper when you're doing hard proofing, so that you don't use up too much paper in that process if you've got a tricky print that takes a bit of work to get the hard proofing right. So it's really good of Photospeed that they do that. They're really thinking for us and trying to save us money, so that's really good of them in that respect. So I'd encourage you to try the test packs if you haven't already chosen a favourite paper, but if you know your papers, then you can go ahead and buy a panoramic paper to suit, with just full of the paper that you want. You can go ahead. I've been doing some printing this morning on the smooth cotton 300, been doing some black and white panoramas and getting some beautiful results. Very, very pleased with them, and it's lovely to have a panoramic paper rather than having to buy, say, A3 paper and then having to print a couple of panoramas on it and then having to guillotine it down. It's nice just having to have the facility to feed the paper into the printer and be able to do it in one go and have a really finished print straight out of the box, to say. So in the print job setting, just to say, generally with an Epson printer I work at 240 ppi. That's the optimal print setting for Epsons. It's the sweet spot, rather than 300 or 360 or anything like that. That's the setting I would recommend. You'll get superb results at 240 ppi. If you've already sharpened your print, do not have the print sharpening switched on. So I would turn that off. 16-bit output, if you like. This is a little bit controversial. Talking to some people in the industry who know what they're talking about, they say, well, the printer converts it back to 8-bit anyway, so it's a waste of time sending 16-bit data to the printer. Others say that it is a value sending 16-bit data to the printer. So you pay your money, you take your choice with that one. And I would always, when using the Photospeed papers, I would choose my custom profile for that paper, and I would have already done my soft and hard proofing using my custom profile. You'll see that I have, for example, here with platinum etching, I've got the generic profiles loaded and my custom profile for the same paper. You'll see that when you get a custom profile sent back to you from Photospeed, it will have your name appended to the name of the paper and your printer, as opposed to generic. I have both loaded because I teach customers coming here to my studio, and so that I can see them just what a massive difference it makes using the custom profile over the generic profile. But I always use the custom profiles. They're superb, the ones that Photospeed produce for us, and they produce them for free. All we have to do is print one of their A4 test charts, post them down, and the very next day they'll send you back by email a custom profile which is absolutely spot on for your system. And although you might think, well, I've got to post one of my precious A4 sheets of fine art paper to them, trust me, the savings in ink and the improvement in quality in your prints is more than worth it, and it's a free service, and it really is worth doing, especially as probably you only use 2 or 3 of their papers. Most of us gradually whittle it down to 2, 3 or 4 favourite papers for different print jobs that we use with them. So I'd really thoroughly recommend that you do that, and it really does pay dividends. The savings in ink alone will make it more than worthwhile the time, the stamp and one sheet of paper. So I'd really urge you to do that. I sometimes use the print adjustment setting. You'll see that I've got that tick there. That was for a black and white job I was doing this morning, and I've got that set to +20. I just find that with my mono prints, very often I need a bit of a brightness lift of +20 with those. And that's just something you need to find out with your system, and I vary that. This makes no change to how bright the image looks on your screen, so when you move this slider, nothing happens on the screen. This only happens to the output of the print. That command intercepts the print as it's being sent to the printer, so you won't see anything on the screen. So you do have to experiment with that, but it can be a very useful little adjustment, and it saves you saving copies of files for print jobs. You can just add a tweak to the brightness or the contrast as you're printing. If you don't need it, then just take that tick out before you send it to the print, and then you can just print your job in the normal way, and I'm sure you'll get superb results from your PhotoSpeed paper. Okay, thank you for listening, and I hope you find it useful, and I hope you find the link as well in this blog post to my other blogs on soft and hard proofing useful, and on my downloads page I'll include a link to this as well. I've got 3 webinars which mount up to 4.5, nearly 5 hours of video tutorials on the whole matter of colour management, soft proofing, hard proofing, sharpening and printing. They're just $3.99 each, 3 episodes, each one about 1.5 hours to 1.75 hours long. So if you really want to start to master your printing and your colour management, I'm sure you'd find them very useful, and each one less than the cost of a magazine. So I'm hoping they'll be of use to you as well. So please feel free to buy those, and I hope they help you to improve the quality of your prints. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.